name is Collett and I have the privilege this morning of talking about what now is known as New Haven Center for Special Needs Adults. And I worked for a number of years in New Albany Public Schools, and I was familiar with New Haven through the work there. But in 2007, I was presented with the opportunity to spend some time, or maybe work there, and I did that over the next period ending in 2023. And I knew a little bit about New Haven when I started there, but I had a chance to learn a whole lot more about it. And I think that's the purpose of the time we're spending together this morning, is to share what I've learned about New Haven. The center, New Haven Center for Special Needs Adults, was formed in the late 50s, maybe like 1960. And it came about as a result of 5 families who had special needs children. And during that time, it's hard to believe, but individuals with special needs were not accommodated or served or allowed to attend public schools. And these families wanted something for their children more than what they could provide themselves. So they got together and spent endless hours, drove miles, many miles, and lots of money to bring about a place that would serve their children. I know some of the places they visited were in Conway, Arkansas, which had a facility similar to what New Haven would become. Visited some areas, I think, around Jackson, Mississippi. Some of the names that come to mind were John and Gladys Davis, and I had the opportunity to work with Gladys. Also, Talmadge Littlejohn was involved from a legal perspective, and I can't remember some other names. But what they accomplished really was an insurmountable task. But what drives parents to do more than their children? So they made it happen, and they got the community involved, and it got the Mississippi legislature involved to provide for the formation, the legality part of New Haven. And it was for school-age children. Well, in 1975, there was a federal law, public law 94-142, I remember that from my school days, was passed that said all children would be served through the public schools. So the children that were going there, that were still school age, were transitioning into public schools. But so there were some individuals that had been there for a number of years, and they had passed school age. So that's when it transitioned into a day facility for individuals beyond school age. And I failed to mention that when it was chartered by the state, the legal name was the Union County Association for Mentally Retarded and Handicapped Children. And that title or name was still being used even in the time when I came on board. And we were approached by a family member saying that that was no longer an appropriate title. And so the board of directors spent some time trying to come up with a name that would be more in line with the service that were provided, who was served, and in terms that were used now. And I failed to mention that it was always referred to as New Haven, even though it was chartered as the official name. And Gladys Davis, I remember this story from her, and thinking about it, is that they wanted a haven for their children, and it was new, so New Haven was decided upon. But it was, I think initially, it had more school-oriented activities as far as, skills and life skills and, basic math and maybe some reading and, that kind of thing. But starting in the time that I was there, we changed the focus a little bit more to provide enrichment activities. And from the very beginning, it would not have happened without community support, obviously. And there's, pictures, and of course you were involved in seeing some things from scrapbooks and all that, where the community was involved in the actual physical building of the building and contributing funds and all that. And I'm kind of going back and forth now, but I guess that's okay. The Union County Board of Supervisors provided funding initially, and their funding is, I know it was continuing through at least 2023, and I'm sure it probably still is, financial funding. And the City of New Albany came on board probably around the early or mid 2000s. But one of our former board members referred to New Haven as the charity of choice, because anyone that knows anything about New Haven, they can't help but support, what it does. Churches, civic clubs, business clubs, they've all been, and individuals have been tremendous, financial supporters. And I know one of the first things that we did was contact Wayne Dye, who was at the bowling alley, and he opened the bowling alley twice a month just for the individuals, the clients, to go there and to bowl. And then we just gradually trying to increase our the number of volunteer opportunities. Added going to the library monthly or maybe bi-monthly, to the museum. Had different clubs. I know the Pilot Club goes in once a month to provide activities. The Mississippi State Extension Office, the Union County office would come and do things. Baptist Hospital. Got the Union County Literacy Council involved, and working with the clients. Transportation and meals were always provided. At one time, transportation was only provided for individuals that lived 8 miles out. If you lived farther than 8 miles, you could come, but you had to get there yourself. Well, that just wasn't the best fit. So transportation started being provided for individuals throughout Union County, and sometimes the route for the van would be over an hour long, because they would go to the farthermost parts of Union County. I also tried to, I know we started going to Disney on Ice, and we had people that would sponsor the tickets for Disney on Ice. One of the most fun memories I have is when we were given free tickets to a wrestling match in Tupelo. And I had not ever been to a wrestling match before, and that was an eye-opening experience. And it was wonderful, and we got there, and if I remember correctly, it was being filmed to be shown on public TV. And about near the end of the wrestling match, they announced that they wanted to film a second show, and that you could stay if you wanted to stay for the second match. And this has been going on probably for a couple of hours or so. And they announced that, is it maybe Hulk Hogan? There was some famous wrestler that was going to be there, and the audience just went wild. Well, this was 9 o'clock at night, and we thought we just can't keep staying this. And we said we're going to have to leave. Did anybody complain? The clients are just the most wonderful individuals in the whole wide world. They just roll with the punches, and there's so much love and care, and just so appreciative of anything that's done for them. And just take disappointment with the best. So anyway, that was a fun memory. We started doing Christmas parades, and I know Walmart Distribution Center really bought into this. And the first year we did a Christmas float, it was so pitiful. It was just a small flatbed trailer, and it looked great in the daytime. Well, it didn't look great, but it was okay. It would pass the entry test in the daytime. Well, we show up for the parade, which is at nighttime. Well, we didn't have any lights on our parade, on our float. And Johnny Davis, I think he drove the truck and pulled the trailer that year, and he said, well, we're going to have lights next year. So I'm not sure exactly how Walmart Distribution Center got involved, but they did. And I mean, we had floats that would, compete anywhere. In fact, one year we went to the Tupelo Christmas Parade, and the theme just happened to be that year about Elvis. And we had this, it was a guitar that they built, and it filled the bed of an 18-wheeler. It was unbelievable. But we would go for some years, we went to the Tupelo Parade, the Ripley Parade, the Pontotoc Parade, the New Albany Parade. I mean, we were on the parade circuit, and it was so much fun. And like I say, just, they were elaborate floats.
In 1960,
Okay.
when New Haven, when everybody was first thinking about putting this together, how was it determined that a child wasn't fit for public school?
I'm not sure. It was probably a individual school district decision, but as you know, from your time in education, society maybe has a norm, an expected norm, and if you don't fit in, well, for example, you wouldn't fit in some norm.
Right.
And we know how good that is that you don't fit in. So I think it was, individuals, obviously if there was an obvious physical difference, if there were, children that were health fragile, or had physical needs that couldn't be met. Buildings were not handicap accessible. So if you had a child that certainly that was in a wheelchair, or even had braces, or had to have crutches or whatever, the buildings just weren't even accommodate. Weren't built to allow them to easy entry to the building and all that. Okay, some differences deal with exceptional behavior, and educational teacher training programs didn't teach things how to handle differences, how to accommodate. We all learn differently, and just in the last 25, well, maybe 30 years is when there were even emphasis placed on diversified teaching and all. So schools didn't, and individuals at New Haven, they are a whole lot more alike us than they are different. But I think the school decision makers were not comfortable with something that was different from what they thought they should be, if that makes any sense.
So I know that there would have been students who obviously that may have known from birth would not have fit in schools or gotten through. But were there ever children who maybe the parents thought that they would be okay, and they got to school and the school said, we're not gonna be able to do this, and kind of kicked them out?
I'm sure that's the case, because during my time as a school administrator, there were teachers who were saying, I can't, this child, I cannot teach this child. This child is not fit in my class. Sometimes I would agree with the teacher, sometimes not. So, and I'm jumping around now, but it's going to be okay. There's one client that comes to mind, and when this child was born, the parents were told, you need to start looking for an institutional placement. You know, this child, you'll never be able to provide the needs for the child, be able to handle the child, this kind of thing. And the parents said, you know, you're not talking to the right people. And the individual was at New Haven for a number of years and one of the more highly successful, highly functioning. So I think it's what parents what they believe about their children, what they're willing to, you know, try to do themselves and to push for. But then some parents would say, well, you know, you are the professional, you are the authority, so if you tell me my child can't be served, I'll just, you know. And then, of course, you know, we've all heard stories of where young children, you know, were institutionalized, that, you know, that shouldn't have been. I'm just kind of stuttering and stammering.
Can you talk about what that means to be institutionalized? Like, what would happen if those parents had listened to that doctor, and the doctor said, you need to find an institution, and they said, okay, we're going to do that? What would have happened?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we've all, and I can't, you know, quote specifics right now, but I know this to be, you know, factual, that it could be a very, very sterile, clinical, almost like a hospital setting, that you know, children or adults would be, you know, really locked in a room, just maybe with, you know, padded walls and a cot, and you know, perhaps bathroom facilities, or would, you know, be, you know, allowed to, you know, go to the bathroom or whatever, but, you know, no interaction. And that's what's the beauty of New Haven, I think, is that the individuals there, they have a peer group, and, you know, whereas if they were in an institutional setting, they would have been, you know, in isolation, very commonly to be isolated, and you know, not out in fresh air and sunshine or any physical activity. You know, an institutionalized individual, it would not be uncommon for them to be a very frail body, just because of probably, like I say, not having any physical activity, any you know, fresh air and sunshine, probably, you know, not adequate nutrition. And of course, I mean, just like there's all different levels of, you know, elder care now, but we know that there's some that, you know, there's the upper end and mid-range and you know, lower end. And, you know, it's so sad to say, but, you know, individuals with special needs, it was probably very, very rare for them not to, it was very rare for them to have an upper end, you know, placement and setting. Because, I mean, as we know now from healthcare, this kind of care is very expensive to provide, and it would have been a very bleak environment and all. And, you know, and unfortunately, sometimes the individual's special needs were an embarrassment to their family. That they would be taken and just, you know, maybe dropped off, and, you know, and contact was severed with them. You know,
As
for the
infant,
family. Yeah, well, yeah,
infant age.
yeah, right, infant or you know, young. You know, it's, of course, when they were an infant, you know, I guess all infants have the same basic needs. But when they got, you know, up, you know, when they were old enough to maybe walk or not walk, or have speech or not have speech, more difficult to manage, that's when they would be, you know, could be abandoned. And I think that's the word, you know, abandoned. And, you know, we just don't, you know, we, you know, hear about the, what, safe baby places now, but I think that's more for it's not necessarily but for children, infants that have special needs. So I think we don't see that abandonment among families now.
It's not as shameful.
No, it's
as
not.
It used to be.
No. In fact, it's embraced.
What do you think? I mean, so an institution would accept even infants, even newborns, if they
now, but right.
Then they would accept them.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Like you could just kind of have a baby, be convinced that it wasn't going to be a normal baby, and you could drive to Jackson and just
Possibly.
drop your baby off
Well,
and pretend like it died?
Yeah.
Is that what people
Yeah,
did?
yeah.
They
Well,
just
just
pretend like
like
the baby didn't make it?
Like I mentioned, the family that was told that, and this, like I said, the mother and daddy, recounted this story to me, that they were told at the time the child was born that, you need to find, you need to be looking for a placement. So, I mean, that one was, like I said, that was told to me, by a parent. But I think what you just said is that sometimes, families just, they were in denial, and it's just like, I guess they told it or believed it so that they actually believed the child, either never existed or didn't live. Yeah.
And then you said, you talked about the shame of it.
Uh-huh.
Were there situations where people, like parents, thought that maybe they had done something
Absolutely.
to create
Being
this
punished. Yes.
child that was not healthy?
Right.
Or
Well, and some, I think it was a common thing that they were being punished. What did I do to deserve this?
like God had
Right.
put this on them.
Punish the parent, or or why was this child, afflicted, in this way? So, I mean, I can sympathize, but I can't empathize with individuals. But there's so many emotions that would go into that. But like I say now, I think differences are embraced. I mean, we're different in all different ways. So
this is over 60 years ago.
Yeah, and too, Leanne, what I think about, just because you were born, I mean, I know you have a beautiful little granddaughter that's the apple of your eye, just celebrated her 2nd birthday, and she's as normal as she can be. But just because you are born with a normal, whatever normal is, child, you're not insured that. There is, we have clients that were involved in automobile accidents and suffered a TBI, when they were in their, teenage years. So, a normal, again, I keep saying normal child at
Whatever
birth,
that means.
yes,
Yeah.
does not ensure that individual will grow up without having special needs in a special setting. But I'm jumping around, but I say in 1975, when public schools by law had to serve individuals with differences, that left New Haven to be open to placements, because there are some individuals that are not cannot be gainfully employed, and of course in New Albany, Union County, which is the area that New Haven serves. I mean, there's so many more that could benefit or be eligible for services there than they could even accommodate. But some families choose to, provide for their needs at home. But we feel like that New Haven, because of the activities that are involved and the interaction with others, is a good place, a good setting, if it fits the needs of that family. And then over the years that I was there, I can think of 2 or 3 that transitioned from New Haven into a residential setting. The ones I'm familiar with, there was one that was in a residential placement in DeSoto County that was 24/7. And then I know of at least 3 of our clients that went to be in nursing facilities here in Union County. And then during that time, we had 1 or 2 that we would pick up at the nursing home, and they would come and spend the day with us at New Haven, and then go back to the nursing home for nighttime. And of course, another thing about New Haven, after once they're finished the services in public schools, of course, they can stay in public schools to the 21 by law, and some choose to do that and some not. So once they complete their public school setting, there's no age range. So I know that during the time I was there, that we had some clients that were in their late 60s maybe even 70. I'm not for sure. So there's no cutoff period on that, which I think that's great.
Do you think that places like New Haven that were started by individuals and privately funded and community supported, the success of schools like New Haven from 1960 to 1975, do you think that their success had anything to do with the law changing for people to say, hey, we can educate these individuals, they can come to schools, we can educate everyone now? Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Well, I'm sure it did, but again, from a national standpoint, the Kennedy family had a child with special needs, and of course that was a very prominent family, nationally and internationally, and I think they were a big proponent of changing the attitude toward individuals with special needs. So, but I think, and I would consider the families like New Albany would be like grassroots, so they brought attention to it. But even when I started with New Haven, it was still probably the only I don't know how to say it, organization or agency or service provider. It was a one of a kind, and it's still one of very, very few. No,
in the state.
Well,
or
state or southeastern. Now I know a few years ago there's Crossroads in Itawamba County. Whether you're familiar with it or not, okay, this is a residential setting for males, and they have cottages, and you'd be interested to know more about that, but and I think and it grew out of a parent that had a special needs child, and this parent had some land, and she had been told that her son would not live to be very old, and she was going to donate this land to be used, I'm hoping I'm getting all this right, as a cemetery, because she wanted to have a plot for her son's grave. Well, he beat the odds, and she thought, well, I'm going to do something for him he's living. And so she started, and the funding and all that, and changed the reason for this land to become for cottages. And I don't know how many they have, maybe, I haven't been in a while, maybe 5 or 6 or 7, whatever, and they have a lodge and a community room, and they do pottery for fundraisers and all kinds of things. So I say all that to say that, it only takes 1 or 2. Well, look at the park along the river in New Albany. It was just the dream of one person, and then that person became 2, and then that kind of thing. So I think that's how New Haven was formed. That there was 1 or 2 that knew 1 or 2 more, and those 5 people got together and say, we can do this, and didn't take no for an answer. And they and they were families that had the respect of the community, and they made the contacts that would could provide financial support, and again to go about it the right way, and it took probably 2 or 3 years, but I think very definitely one of a kind, simply because of the fact that it was chartered through the state. And I know as late as 2023 there was no federal or state money put into New Haven. This was totally done by individuals and the community. The only tax money that was going into New Haven when I was there was 1% meal from the Board of Supervisors and a state amount from the City of New Albany. So Board of Supervisors and the City of New Albany is the only tax money that goes into the operation of New Haven. Now that's amazing.
It is amazing. When it first started in, let's just say 1960,
Okay.
around 1960, how many students do you think there were at the very beginning?
Well, there were probably about 5 because it was just those
5 families.
Yeah, 5 families. Yeah.
And what were the around?
Okay, they were like, I'm gonna say they were young children, maybe. I'm gonna say maybe 7, 8, something like that.
So elementary age.
Yeah. Oh yes.
So you had about 5 elementary age
children,
all white. Did it ever become? I mean, or when did it become open to more children and integrated?
Okay. Well, when I became associated in 2007, and the enrollment then was about 11 or 12 students. And, it's hard for me to say because I don't recall it being integrated, but I just don't pay much attention to that.
Yeah. Well, it was so much later.
It was boys, but it was males and females, and there were different levels of needs. A number of the clients, and that it grew to maybe like 20 or so, and I think maybe there's even maybe 30 plus now. But there's individuals that have Down syndrome, autism, traumatic brain injuries, developmentally delayed. There's all different. I mean, the board would look at individual cases. Now, during the time I was there, we did have individuals that were in a wheelchair. The only thing, of course, the staff was so small and so limited. Individuals that were medically fragile because we did not have a health professional, on staff. But and we did have some that if they had a caregiver that could attend with them to take care of their needs. So really and truly, the board they accepted anyone. I know one of the big community pushes that we had is within 6 months' time, this community donated about $75,000 to provide a handicap accessible bus that had a wheelchair lift so that we could transport, a client that was in a wheelchair. And that was, the Pilot Club was one of the clubs that really bought into it and wrote some grants to get part of that money, I think about $10,000. And churches, I know Ingomar Baptist Church has been one of the longest supporters financially and provide activities and that kind of thing. And I'm not sure what the original question was about who could attend that kind of thing. But yes, I mean, there's no, it's like I say, it's an integrated, racially integrated, and that probably happened for. You think about the public schools were not integrated until the like 68 to 70.
That's what I was wondering if it became integrated before the public schools did.
I don't know that for a fact. I would say probably not, just because the integration wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you started, I'm just kind of doing very simple math. Let's just say you were 5 in 1960 and you started at New Haven. So by the time it became public law, you would have already aged out of school. You would have been 20.
21, right.
Around 20.
Yeah.
So even kids who were 6, 7, 8, they probably would have been pretty much aged out of school. So none of the original students of New Haven would have ever attended public school.
Now, see, they would have fit in, they would have come under the wire at 21, but I doubt very seriously that a family would have put a child in public school at the age of 19 or 20.
Right.
Okay. And I can think of, there's one family in particular. Well, I think of 2 families that I know that were there during that time, and their family member never went to public school. Yeah.
So, in 1975, when it became public law that you have to educate everyone, New Haven was still a school, and there still wasn't. I guess there probably still were young children who had joined New Haven at that point. So let's say you were 8 or 9 years old at New Haven in 1974. Did all the parents automatically say, okay, we're going to go to public school now? Or do you think, or were some hesitant to send their children?
I'm sure there were some hesitant, but on the other hand, you think about how much more they could, because in, say, 1975 or 76, transportation wasn't been provided by New Haven if you live very far out. And I'm not sure even if it was provided then. I really don't know that. I mean, I'm sure they didn't have a van when they first started because parents had to, I know parents, brought them there. So, they would have transportation, would have, school lunches. So I think that for young children, they probably did transition because New Haven wasn't equipped to be, an accredited educational setting. But I think, some parents, because I think New Haven has always been well accepted and well respected by parents, and so they were pleased with what their child was getting, and it was certainly a safe place. So they may have, chosen to, finish out, their time there and stay on. And I know I'm thinking of one of our clients that came later, and this client's parents. This client was knew how to read when starting New Haven, because the parent had taken the child to the public schools for a portion of the day to learn how to read. So, get this right. So, after 1975, the parent did not want the child to be in public school, but wanted to read. So they would take them to school for a reading class, and the school had to serve them because they were within the guidelines. But that's all they went there. Now, this particular client does not do math very well at all because did not learn to do math, but learned to read.
What year did you become an educator? I moved to New Albany in 1975. Okay.
And started the school system in 1975.
That was your first year of teaching?
Well, I moved in 1975, and I did substitute teaching. We moved in March. I did substitute teaching till August, and then the first year I worked as I don't have an education degree, undergraduate. I worked as the superintendent secretary, and he talked to me about going to graduate school. So that's when I started graduate school and did a master's in guidance and counseling. And then I just kept going to school, and then I got the administrator's license.
I'd be interested to know if there were a teacher who had been teaching before 1975 and would have seen and we could talk about the transition, of being a teacher before that, and then, like in 1975, where did all of these special education teachers come from?
Well, they didn't.
They didn't exist, did they? They just had to learn?
Okay, I went to Ford to be the building administrator principal in 1990. And even then, I can remember teachers that had been teaching before 1975. And so from 75 to 90 is what, 15 years? Is that right? Okay, so, teachers would come to me and say, I don't know what to do with this child. I mean that was really how they'd say it. I don't know what to do.
They had never been trained.
No, they had never been trained whatsoever.
How to teach a child to read or write. Who had never.
And
teachers still struggle with that today.
Right. Well, you think about it. So in 1975, there were not any special education programs in colleges and universities. They just said, you're going to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
And here you go.
Absolutely. I know, and okay, in the
No wonder parents would be hesitant.
Yeah, in the 90s, I remember learning styles was a big deal, and we sent teachers to, and I can't remember there was a husband and wife team. It's left me now, and we sent teachers to conferences in New York just to learn how to accommodate teaching styles. Well, that was second nature to you, but you came along. When did you graduate college?
91, I think.
Okay. So did you do any college classes in special ed as a requirement in your course?
I took some I just took some graduate classes after after I undergraduate, because I think people were at that time in 1990-ish, our professors were saying, if you ever want a job, if you have a special education certification, and they were really targeting art and music, because their other threat was always, you're going to be the first people to be fired when a school district is struggling because you're extra. And so they really pushed us to get special education certification, because you could always get a job because it was required. And so I'm just thinking about how hard it would be as a teacher to have been, and I think about the older you get as a teacher, and then they say, well, now, I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to make us learn how to use iPads, but I can't imagine if I've been teaching for 20 years and in 1975, and then they say, okay, we're opening the floodgates.
Absolutely.
Everybody can come in, and you're going to teach these kids, and we have not equipped you to teach.
Well, let's just think about
kids.
If you have a special needs child, and let's just say there's no behavior issues. Okay, they say they're the most calm, polite, well-mannered, everything about them, but they have a learning disability. Okay, so if everything else is perfect, except the fact it takes them longer to learn, or they need to have, a different learning style. So even in the perfect setting, just the time it would take, how frustrating that would be for a teacher, because all teachers want to see their students succeed. It's like, I've got 25 children in my classroom. I can't give one or two the time they need and give the other 22 the time they need. So just the time management alone would be a frustration. Then if you add, the very real probability that you have students that have behavior issues. So,
and all the multitude of other things that could be challenging.
Absolutely, yeah.
They could have vision and hearing problems and
speech,
physical, everything.
Yes, yeah. And then you've got parents that, sometimes parents are in denial. They want their children to be able to do more than they can really, really do. So, dealing with the parents, I don't say dealing, I shouldn't say dealing, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Working with.
Managing all of the people.
Right, yeah. And, and getting the parents,
well,
teachers.
It's a lot, and it must have been a very difficult transition, but also huge and important and necessary.
Well, of course, to be a federal law, But New Haven, it was absolutely, like I say, it should have never happened in that time period, in 1960s. It should have never happened, and just because of the dedication of those families and them, having the resources, being resources of time and knowing who to contact and pulling together and that kind of thing, and then for it to stay in existence too, because think about it, when public school, it was founded to provide an educational setting for special needs children. So once that need was met through the public schools, why didn't the doors close?
Right.
you know.
But
So,
they didn't. And now it's just grown and grown.
Yes.
Because all of those children who now can go to public schools, when they age out of public schools or graduate or whatever they do, whatever, even at 21 or 22.
21.
21.
They can stay through 21.
Through 21.
They can stay through the school year they turn 21. So
And then what happens if they are not, if they're not able to be employed?
Right.
They have parents who have to work.
Well, we've had, parents, while I was there, parents would say, if it were not for New Haven, either a parent would have to not be able to work and stay home with the child, or the child would have to, well, not child, adult, they would have to be at home by themselves. Either, maybe not in a safe environment, or maybe sitting watching TV all day, eating junk food all day. So, it provided for parents to be gainfully employed, if that's what they need to do and want to do, or it provided for the family member to have interaction, be in a safe place, that kind of thing.
Yeah, be among peers.
Yes, absolutely. And we've had clients over the years that that became employed, and I know even some, in recent years would have part-time jobs. Some would do volunteer work. I think even now they still volunteer at the Good Samaritan food pantry. There's not anything that can.
Well, we don't throw away people, and then they don't disappear when they finish school. They're still here and they're a part of our community. You and I could talk about this forever, obviously. Like you said, this school should have never happened.
No.
It wasn't copied from the school in
No.
Tupelo.
No.
There was no school.
No. Okay.
I mean, these parents, it is a powerful statement that these 5 families said, we're not going to send our child off to Jackson to live a lonely life. And, we believe that this child has value and can learn and thrive. And we're not ashamed of our child.
No.
And so we're gonna start this school. So who taught at this school? Was it the parents?
Okay. Oh, I need to go back and look this up.
I may be getting too detailed.
No. There was someone that did music. They had someone that came and did music, and there was 1 or 2, and the name is just, I can see the face, but the name won't quite come to me. But
Well, I imagine that you kind of assume that these 5 families, there were other siblings who did attend public schools, so I guess that kind of helped set the schedule for it. That's why they followed the
because
school.
it still basically follows the school schedule.
They probably had a brother and sister or whatever.
Probably, yeah, possibly. And I did too, and I said it was Union County now. For a while there, because there was nothing else around, we had some clients, and I don't know, more than one that came from Pontotoc County, but they would pay, they would have to provide transportation. We would not transport outside the county. We had clients from Lee County, I know, and then one from Benton County. And another thing about the cost of it, during the time I was there, families paid, it started out they were paying $20 a month. And then I think it went to $30 a month. I'm not sure what it is now. Okay. You think about that kind of setting when they were paying $20 a month, it would have been $200 a day in a public, because most of them are for profit, institution. $20 a month. That was transportation.
Didn't even cover snacks.
Oh, no. Well, I've heard described many, many times that, we all have days that are better than other days. So I don't care if you know about New Haven or don't know about New Haven. If you're ever having one of those days, it's not your best day. And if you go visit New Haven, it will turn it into a good day. It's just, it's just a remarkable place. There's lots of things in life, sometimes are good and sometimes are bad, that you have to experience them to be able to talk about it or understand it. And so New Haven, you have to experience it to really appreciate the difference it can make in the lives of those it serves and in the lives of those who serve New Haven.